It was a quiet Friday night, the kind that usually slips by without leaving a trace. My wife had gone out to visit her mother for the weekend, and I figured I'd spend the evening doing something simple, watching a movie and relaxing. My younger sister, who'd recently moved in with us temporarily while searching for her own place, was home too. We didn't have any special plans, so I ordered some food, picked a thriller on Netflix, and invited her to watch with me. At the time, it felt like the most normal thing in the world. Just two siblings sharing a couch, lost in a movie. Nothing more, nothing strange. But that night, something shifted. The living room was dimly lit, just the flicker of the TV screen lighting our faces. At first, we sat with enough space between us, each minding our own world as the movie played. We joked about the bad acting, shared a few laughs, and passed a bowl of popcorn back and forth. Everything felt casual. But then, slowly, almost unnoticeably, the space between us started to close. She leaned in, just slightly at first. I didn't think much of it. Maybe she was cold, maybe she was just getting comfortable. I told myself that. I wanted to believe that. But the way she looked at me, soft, almost searching, felt different. I remember catching her glance during a quiet scene. It wasn't the way a sister looks at her brother. It was longer, deeper, confusing. I quickly turned my eyes back to the screen, pretending I didn't notice. My heart beat a little faster, and not because of the suspense on the screen. The room suddenly felt warmer. My thoughts began to race, trying to make sense of what was happening, trying to dismiss it as just my imagination. I kept telling myself, it's nothing. You're just tired. You're overthinking it. But then, she moved closer again. This time, her shoulder brushed against mine, and she didn't pull away. She didn't flinch. She stayed right there. I froze. Everything in me said to move, to stand up, to break whatever this strange moment was. But I couldn't. I just sat there, locked in place, the sound of the movie fading into the background, replaced by the rush of thoughts in my head. What was going on? Was this really happening? Why wasn't I stopping it? I didn't know what to do. I didn't even know what I was feeling. 100 things were running through my mind: loyalty, confusion, shame, fear. I looked at her again, this time more carefully, and what I saw in her eyes made my stomach twist. That night didn't go the way I expected. And what happened after changed everything in our family. But before I tell you what really happened next, you need to understand how it all got this far, and why this story isn't as simple as it sounds. A few months before that night, things at home had already started to feel different, even though I couldn't quite put my finger on it at the time. My sister, Emma, had shown up at our doorstep after breaking up with her long-term boyfriend. She was heartbroken, lost, and needed a place to stay. My wife and I didn't even hesitate, we offered her our guest room. It felt like the right thing to do. She was family, and she needed support. What we didn't expect was how quickly the dynamic in our house would begin to shift. At first, everything felt normal. Emma kept to herself mostly, stayed in her room or went out to job interviews during the day. But little by little, she began to settle in more. She started spending more time with me, helping in the kitchen when my wife was out, joining me for late-night talks, laughing at old memories from our childhood. It was comforting in a way. We hadn't been this close in years. But looking back, maybe we had crossed an invisible line somewhere. Not physically, but emotionally. We were bonding more than we should have. My wife, Lisa, didn't seem to notice at first. She was busy with work, always juggling meetings and deadlines. She trusted both of us. Why wouldn't she? There was never any reason to question what was going on inside our home. But inside me, there was a slow-burning tension I couldn't explain. Emma's presence started to feel heavier. Like she wasn't just staying with us, like she was quietly taking up more and more space. Not just in the house, but in my head. She'd started dressing differently too, more relaxed, more casual around me. At first, I thought I was just reading too much into it. I convinced myself there was nothing to worry about. But the way she'd sit beside me, the way she'd laugh at things I said that weren't even funny, it felt off. Still, I ignored the signals. I didn't want to believe anything was wrong. That night on the couch, though, changed everything. The look in her eyes wasn't something I could unsee. It was like all the subtle signs, all the moments I had brushed off, had been leading up to that one. And as much as I wanted to pretend nothing had changed, deep down, I knew things weren't going back to the way they were. Not after that. After that night, something unspoken settled between Emma and me. We never talked about it, not even the smallest comment, but everything had changed. She kept acting like nothing happened, still cheerful in the mornings, still joining me in the living room like we were just close siblings. But I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. There was a weight in every glance, every shared silence. I started to avoid being alone with her, hoping the distance would clear my head, help me push whatever that moment was back into the shadows. But Emma didn't seem bothered at all. In fact, she started finding more excuses to be around me. One evening, Lisa asked me if everything was okay. She'd noticed I was quieter, distracted. I lied and said work was stressing me out, which wasn't entirely untrue, but it wasn't the full picture either. The guilt of hiding even a sliver of truth from her made my chest tighten. Lisa had always trusted me blindly. We'd been married 5 years, built a life together, planned a future. But now I was holding back thoughts I didn't even want to admit to myself. At the same time, Emma's behavior grew harder to ignore. She'd start conversations late at night when Lisa had already gone to bed. Sometimes she'd sit close on the edge of the bed in the guest room if I came in to say goodnight. Always with that soft voice, that same look that said more than words ever could. I kept trying to rationalize it, maybe she was just emotionally lost, maybe she was reaching out for support in a confusing time. But a part of me didn't believe that anymore. A part of me feared she knew exactly what she was doing. Meanwhile, Lisa had been planning a small weekend getaway for the two of us, a way to reconnect. She felt we needed time alone, away from everything. I agreed, thinking space would fix what I couldn't explain. But the timing was all wrong. The night before we were supposed to leave, something happened. Something that forced the tension to the surface in a way I couldn't ignore. I didn't know how to tell my wife. I didn't know how to face Emma either. The walls were closing in from both sides, and the truth I was avoiding was beginning to take shape in ways I never expected. And once it came out, nothing would ever be the same again. The night before our weekend trip, the air in the house felt strange, too still, like something was holding its breath. Lisa had gone to bed early, excited about the getaway. She had packed everything, even printed our itinerary and set the alarm for the morning. She was trying to save something she didn't know was slipping. I stood outside the bedroom for a few moments before going in, pretending to brush my teeth a little longer, pretending to check my phone. But really, I was just stalling. Emma was in the living room again, this time sitting on the edge of the couch with a half-finished glass of wine in her hand. The TV was on, but she wasn't watching. She looked up as I passed by, eyes catching mine in that same unreadable way. "You're really going tomorrow?" she asked, almost like it wasn't a simple question. I nodded. "Yeah. Lisa's been looking forward to it." She just smiled faintly, then looked back at the screen. But there was something behind that smile that didn't sit right. I started to walk away, but she called my name. I turned around slowly, unsure of what I was stepping into. "Can we just talk for a minute?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, almost vulnerable. I hesitated. Every part of me knew I should have said no, but I didn't. I sat down, not too close, but not far enough either. She started talking about her breakup again, how lost she felt, how nothing in her life made sense anymore. It was the same story I'd heard before, but this time it felt like she was using it as a doorway into something else. "You're the only one who really sees me," she said softly. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if things were different, if I met someone like you first. My heart pounded in my chest. This wasn't just sadness talking, this was something she had been carrying for a while. And I realized then that whatever this was between us, it wasn't just in my head. I was standing at the edge of a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Every instinct screamed at me to walk away, to put space between us. But her eyes held me there like a trap I didn't see coming. Then something happened that I can't forget. Lisa's voice suddenly echoed from the hallway. She had woken up, and she was coming closer. Lisa's footsteps echoed down the hallway, soft but steady, like they carried the weight of something more than just curiosity. I shot up from the couch instantly, putting some space between me and Emma, who didn't even flinch. She stayed seated, calm, almost like she had expected this moment to come. My mind raced. I didn't know what Lisa had heard, if anything. Maybe she just woke up thirsty. Maybe it was just bad timing. But my gut told me otherwise. Lisa appeared in the doorway a few seconds later, still in her pajamas, her hair a little messy from sleep. Her eyes moved from me to Emma, then back again. Her smile was weak, confused. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice low but sharp enough to cut through the tension. "Nothing," I said quickly. "We were just talking." She couldn't sleep. Emma didn't say a word. She just looked down at the floor like the conversation had suddenly turned too heavy for her. But there was something off in her body language, something I couldn't read. Lisa nodded slowly, but I could see it in her eyes. Doubt. That seed of uncertainty had just been planted, and it wasn't going anywhere. She didn't press it, though. She turned and walked back toward the bedroom without another word. The silence she left behind was louder than anything she could have said. The next morning, our trip didn't happen. Lisa said she wasn't feeling well. She blamed it on bad sleep, a headache maybe. But her eyes avoided mine the whole time. She moved around the house like a ghost, present but distant. I kept trying to convince myself that she hadn't heard anything the night before. That it was just an awkward moment, nothing more. But that day, something else happened. Something I didn't see coming. Emma was gone. No note. No goodbye. No message. Just an empty guest room and a few of her clothes still left behind. I tried calling her, texting her, but nothing. It was like she had vanished overnight. Lisa didn't ask a single question about it. Not one. She just acted like Emma never existed. That silence from both of them ate at me like a slow burn. But it didn't stop there. 2 days later, I got an anonymous email. No subject. No name. Just a single sentence: "You should have been honest with her before she found out herself." I froze. My palms went cold. I read the message again and again, trying to figure out who sent it. Was it from Emma? Did Lisa write it from another account? Or was someone else watching, someone who saw more than they should have? I was no longer just dealing with guilt or confusion. Now I was being watched. Judged. And whatever truth was hiding in the shadows, it wasn't going to stay hidden much longer. That moment marked the shift. This wasn't just a family issue anymore. It was turning into something bigger, something that could unravel everything if I didn't figure out who else was involved, and what they really knew. I stared at the email for what felt like hours. The words kept replaying in my head: "You should have been honest with her before she found out herself." I didn't know who sent it, but it didn't matter anymore. The damage had already been done. Lisa wasn't the kind of person to make scenes or scream when she was hurt. She withdrew. And now I realized, she hadn't just suspected something that night, she had known. Maybe not the details, but enough to shake the trust we'd built over years. That same evening, I sat down with her in the kitchen. She was chopping vegetables, acting like everything was fine. I couldn't take it anymore. I told her everything, not because I wanted to escape the guilt, but because she deserved the truth. I explained what had been happening with Emma, the way things had shifted, the emotional confusion I never saw coming, and the line I'd come close to crossing. I didn't justify it. I didn't blame Emma. I just laid it all out, raw and honest. Lisa listened. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. When I finished, she looked at me with the kind of sadness that said more than anger ever could. She said, "I knew something was wrong. I just didn't want to believe it." We didn't talk much after that. She left the next morning to stay at her mother's place, saying she needed time to think. I didn't ask her when she'd be back. Deep down, I knew that answer might not come for a while. A week later, Emma called. Her voice was shaky. She apologized, said she had never meant to cause problems, that her emotions were a mess after the breakup, and that she let her boundaries blur in a way she regretted. I believed her. But I also told her we couldn't talk anymore. Not for now. Maybe not ever. Some things, once cracked, can't be pieced back the same way. In the days that followed, I started going to therapy. Not because someone told me to, but because I needed to understand myself better. How I let my guard down, how I failed to see the impact of my silence. It's easy to think loyalty is just about actions, but sometimes, it's about thoughts we allow to live too long. Lisa and I spoke again, weeks later. She wasn't sure what the future looked like, and I didn't push her to decide. All I could do was show her that I was willing to fix what I had broken. Slowly. Honestly. Sometimes, infidelity isn't just about cheating. Sometimes, it's about the emotional distance we allow to grow, the secrets we hide even from ourselves, and the moments we let pass instead of facing them head-on. This story didn't end with screaming or betrayal in the traditional sense, but it still left scars. Real ones. If there's anything I've learned, it's that the smallest decisions, the quietest moments, can change everything. And if you don't protect what matters when it's whole, you might spend the rest of your life trying to fix what's been quietly falling apart. The days that followed were strangely quiet. The kind of silence that makes you notice every little sound in the house, the hum of the fridge, the creak in the hallway floor, the echo of footsteps that weren't coming anymore. Lisa was gone, and Emma had disappeared into her own world. For the first time in years, I was alone with my thoughts, and that was the loudest part of all. I kept going back to that night on the couch. I kept asking myself what I could have done differently. Maybe I should have stood up earlier. Maybe I should have never let things get that close. But regret is a strange thing. It teaches you lessons only after you've already paid the price. I eventually found out who sent the email. It wasn't Lisa or Emma, it was one of Emma's friends, someone she'd confided in after leaving. She thought I deserved a wake-up call. And in some twisted way, she was right. That message forced me to face the truth I was too scared to deal with. About a month later, Lisa came home. Not to stay, just to talk. We sat at the same kitchen table where I'd once avoided hard conversations. She told me she needed clarity. She'd spent time thinking about the trust we built and the trust we lost. She didn't blame me entirely. She knew Emma was vulnerable and that I had been caught off guard. But what hurt her most wasn't that something happened, it was that I hadn't told her when it could have made a difference. Silence, she said, can feel just like betrayal. We didn't make any promises that day. No dramatic reconciliations. But we agreed to try therapy, together. Not to fix what was already broken, but to see if anything real was still left beneath it. And honestly, that felt more honest than anything else we could have done. Emma texted me once after that. She said she was moving to a new city and starting over. She didn't ask for forgiveness, but she said she hoped we could both heal in our own ways. I wished her well. I meant it. But I knew some doors were better left closed. Looking back, what started as a normal